All right. Welcome to NFL Outdated Cover 2 series. This episode, we are talking about the Houston Texans, and I am joined by Ruben, Mr. 713 from 713 HSB, the podcast. How's it going?
It's going good, man. Thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to talking some football.
Absolutely. And the Texans has been they've been a topic that I've wanted to talk about all season. It's such an interesting there's so many different things to kind of talk about with them, and obviously we can kind of get right into it. There wasn't a lot expected from this season, but talk about maybe some of the highs and lows from the Texans season this year.
Yeah, so I think the lows, starts with David Culley. As much
Yeah.
as, people love to say, we like David Culley, I like the man too.
Mm-hmm.
When it came to the IQ of the game, it just wasn't there. Not knowing when to take timeouts, not knowing when to go for it, when to not go for it, thinking about go for it, then calling the timeout to kick a field goal, things like that. It showed why he was never anything other than a wide receivers coach. The highs, I think, was the rookie class. Almost every single rookie for the Houston Texans did a very damn good job. Starting with Davies Mills. Shout out to Davies Mills, man. I am one of the few Davies Mills supporters here in Houston. We're kind of on the fence, right? We're mad that he's not Deshaun Watson, but if you look at what this kid's done, outplayed Trevor Lawrence, outplayed Mac Jones, outplayed, he looks better than Justin Fields, the most 300-yard games, most multiple touchdown games. I'm on the Davies Mills train.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Yeah, but I mean, Davies Mills, what he's doing, Nico Collins, the wide receiver, like we drafted a couple picks later, 6'4", the rookie in the Roy Lopez, the defensive tackle. He had one of the best win rates, as a rookie. Garrett Wallow, the safety linebacker prototype that we got out of TCU. He had a game where he had almost 18 tackles. Every single rookie for the Houston Texans showed that, that it's something that you could build upon. And we only had a couple. And every single one of them hit. Every single one of them came after the third round. Nick Caserios, shout out to him. We in Houston, we hate the Patriot way, as they say. We got Bill O'Brien. We brought in Brian Gaines. There's been nothing but Patriots for us. Ever since Nick Caserios come in, man, he is gaining the trust of Houston fans.
Absolutely. And kind of getting into that, so talk about grading him, and obviously you trust him, but grade his, what he's done then. Obviously draft wise, he's done pretty well. So grade him this year.
Yeah, so when he came in, he really talked about building his legacy. And he knew that we were tired of the Patriot Ray, Bill O'Brien, wanted to be God, GM head coach, offense coordinator, all that stuff. Comes in, signs almost 30 free agents on 1-year deals. I believe that was to keep Deshaun Watson. And then some of them worked out. Desmond King worked out. Kuja Hill worked out. He did a lot of stuff that we were not used to as Houston Texans fans. So ever since then, we've been on the Nick Caserio train, and man, he's been doing pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, when you think of GMs, I mean, you think of the ones that are kind of quieter behind the back. You don't hear much about them. That's maybe a good thing sometimes. But sometimes in a franchise, you need to kind of shake things up, right? And obviously I'm sure the Texans, just with everything kind of going on with Deshaun Watson, you need kind of that voice. And has he kind of been out front, or is it he just kind of making these moves? And does he kind of make, many comments kind of in the media?
No, he's made it known that this is his show.
Mm-hmm.
He said it in a press conference last week, when he talked about the pressure, do you have the pressure of, finding the next head coach? He's like, I only have the pressure that you guys put on me. This dude knows that we are, we just got put in a crazy situation where we had a franchise quarterback. Dude, all this stuff happens in the offseason. We've never seen this before, so We were really looking for someone to right the ship and him to come in. He's made it known this is his job. You know, a lot of people have talked about Jack Easterby, and a couple days ago he said it himself. Like, you guys make this, make him bigger than what he really is. So Nick Caserio was just, I'm the man.
Yeah, and I'm sure. I mean, that's got to be a good thing. I mean, there's so much kind of going on with the future and everything, and we can kind of get back to Davis Mills kind of coming up, but um, with that voice, I mean, before we do that, what about this kind of like the elephant in the room, Deshaun Watson? I mean,
Yes.
how do you, as a podcaster, as fans, how do you see this resolving? I mean, what is the best possible scenario for that happening?
Look, man, the question is, we still don't know. And I like, when Deshaun was drafted, I knew this guy was going to bring us, a Super Bowl one day. I have this dude's name right here on, on the helmet. However, after all this stuff going on, it's kind of hard, to keep the QB, as much as, he made your jaw drop every single week. But I think now, and Nick Caserio said it himself, that, more than likely Deshaun has played his last game for the Houston Texans. But then again, we don't know. We know that Deshaun Watson and Brian Flores have had conversations with each other. And I'm sorry, I'm not firing David Culley unless I'm going after Brian Flores.
So yeah, go ahead and talk about that, because I'm a Bears fan,
Okay.
and obviously we're on the interview train with Brian Flores as well. I'm not necessarily a fan, but talk about why maybe Flores would be a good fit, and maybe why you like him in Houston.
Yeah, so you look at, the culture was Bill O'Brien. No one wanted, no one liked this guy. He shouted at the fan, like the fan said, "You suck, motherfucker." He said, "You suck too." Going at, no one liked Bill O'Brien. And then what Brian Flores did in Miami, he goes 5-11. He then goes 10-6, and then wins 7 of his last 8 games. Pretty much overachieved with the Miami Dolphins with Tua Tagovailoa. I think, this is my personal opinion, that if Brian Flores does not get fired, because it was a shock when he did, that maybe David Culley is still here. But
Really?
because Brian Flores got available, Nick Caserio had to be licking his chops, and someone else, D'Amico Ryans, former Houston Texans linebackers, put his name in the mix. Nick Caserio probably sees his next head coach in these, in these next couple guys. You had to make the decision on David Culley. He was a bridge coach. I'm just waiting to see who he finds. I really do think it's Brian Flores.
Well, yeah, so that's interesting. Obviously, Flores is really, I don't know, enamored by Deshaun Watson. If they, hire Flores, does that maybe, I don't know, open the door back up for Deshaun Watson or not?
Yeah, so it gives you two things.
Yeah.
It's either you're going to say, Brian Flores, we're going to work together and we're going to go into Houston, or it's, I still don't want to play for Houston. I want to play, for Brian Flores, but unfortunately, he's the Texans head coach. I'm waiving my no trade clause, and it's just a bidding war. The highest guy goes for Deshaun Watson. There's no lose-lose for the for the Texans at this point. If Deshaun Watson stays, we get a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. Last year, this dude was responsible for literally 74% of our total offense.
Yeah, there's no question he's talented. It's just all that off the field stuff. It's so crazy that we don't really have any inkling of resolution that way, his legal troubles, but he's definitely talented, and that might be a good match with Flores, regardless. So
Look, winning cures all, and he's hated right now in Houston. I'm not even gonna lie. I hate this dude, still, for pretty much quit on on Houston. As much as we want to, go, hey, like, Deshaun, we have your back. It takes 2 to tango. The dude also quit on this city. It's going to be very hard, to convince Houston at the beginning. But as they say, winning cures all. And when Deshaun Watson was a Houston Texan, it wasn't a matter of if he brings a Super Bowl to Houston. It's a matter of when.
Well, and speaking of a candidate, and I don't know how much, I just, heard his name briefly. He was going to interview, brings Super Bowl pedigree. Hines Ward, he interviewed for the position, didn't he?
Yeah, so I like that, like Nick Cassier said in his press conference, that he's going to be very thorough.
Mhm.
Don't expect anything. No one expected Hines Ward, to be interviewed, for the head coaching job. But, he said it himself. He wants to find the next Mike Tomlin. And who are we to say someone who hasn't won a Super Bowl, who's pretty much a Hall of Famer, what he could bring to the staff? Maybe is not just head coach. Maybe like we want to bring him in to help our wide receivers. So I like the fact that he's doing that. He's interviewing, Joe Lombardi, the DC from the Eagles yesterday. He's interviewing anyone who been in the game of football, and you have to love that.
Yeah, I mean that is a good place to start. Obviously, when you look at Houston, they're not going to be playoffs or Super Bowl contenders next year, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean it's good to kind of start from the bottom. And I think, as a Bears fan, I've noticed, they with the Bears, they kind of make this assumption that they're this, franchise, this, pillar franchise, but and they have not wanted to, just tear it all down and start from the top. They've been trying to, piecemeal it here and there. And if you actually kind of peel everything back and get smart people in the room, get these successful players like Hines Ward, these people to at least interview, then it's different perspective. So I do like that.
I do. I love it. It like it's doing something, that like no one has, like does. It's just like when the Giants, hired Joe Judge, that obviously failed, but someone being hired from as a special teams coordinator, that they took a shot. That's what the Houston Texans need to do. They need to take a shot and find their next Mike Tomlin, as Nick Caserio said.
Absolutely. And speaking of kind of, taking their next shot, you said you really like Davis Mills,
I
and
do.
he played well this year. So what do you like about him? And do you think he's going to get his shot next year, 2022, to be the guy?
Yeah, so I think that if you look at the whole story on Davis Mills, it makes you like him even more.
Mhm.
The dude only played 14 games in college. Nick Caserio said himself, we drafted Davis Mills in the 3rd round this year, so we don't have to draft him in the 1st round next year.
Mhm.
And his first stint, he was thrown in there. Tyrod Taylor looked like a god his first, week and a half. It was Deshaun who, then he gets his hamstring messed up. Davis Mills comes in, he looked horrible the first couple games. He has that 4 interception game in the rain against the Bills, comes back against the Patriots, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. Eventually gets benched by Tyrod Taylor, and then, comes back and improved in every single way. He had 4 opening drive touchdowns, this year. That is more than what Deshaun ever had as a Houston Texan in his 4 to 5 years. There is definitely something with Davis Mills. We had the worst running game in the NFL at 32. Our offensive line consisted of injuries. You're a Bears fan, like you said, I am looking at James Daniels. I am telling Nick Caserio, throw the bag at him. Let's build this offense line. You still have Brandon Cooks, one of the most underrated wide receivers in the NFL. You have Nico Collins, 6'4". There's a lot of great stuff for the Houston Texans and Davis Mills, and he's just at the center of it. Get him an offensive-minded coach, because that's what we were lacking. David Culley and Tim Kelly had no type of offensive IQ in their bones, and Davis Mills still showed that he could put up good numbers.
Yeah, I think that is important. You have a coach that's really you're gonna, put your players in the best spot to succeed, and that's what you kind of need. Offensively, defensively, all of that. I mean, and you talked about some of the wide receivers. I mean, so what will it look like as far as, I mean, who will be the bona fide number one? I mean, is Nico Collins kind of getting there, or what do you see for this group going into next year?
Yeah, so I still think it's Brandon Cooks. However, in the games where Davis Mills has thrown the 3 touchdowns, 300 yards, Brandon Cooks was not playing. So that's something to go, into the offseason. It's like with DeAndre Hopkins, right? When you had DeAndre Hopkins, you're throwing at him 10, 15 times in the game. No question about it. So I do like Nico Collins. I think he might have a very good, second year for the Houston Texans. However, tight end Brevin Jordan had 5 touchdowns this year. Next year, I think he's going to be really someone special, if like in the late rounds in fantasy, or as a weapon for the Houston Texans. I think Brevin Jordan does something very good next year.
Yeah, and what makes him so good?
Yeah, so he was supposed to be a late first, second round pick. Not a very good blocking tight end, but the dude is a vertical, threat tight end, could go up and get it, just athletic as hell. He broke the rookie touchdown record for us this year. So, next year we're expecting a lot of good things from Brevin Jordan. This whole rookie offensive, like as a weapon, the trio, Davis Mills, Nico Collins, Brevin Jordan. We were expecting defense in the first three picks, and we got nothing but offense. But all three of these dudes showed that you could build in the future on them.
Yeah, and speaking of kind of building, the running back room, I mean, Rex Burkhead really kind of showed out. Is he a a workhorse back? And I mean, what will that room look like in 2022?
Yeah, I really want them to spice it up, right? I do love Rex Burkhead. He does, bring in that, that wide receiver running back factor. I would want for him to bring him back. I think the Houston Texans need a shifty running back that could catch out of the backfield. Kenneth Walker, the running back from Michigan State, is someone that I am infatuated with. If you want to go, on the ground and pound, Isaiah Spiller from A&M, I think is someone the Houston Texans need to take. The running back, I think, is very huge for the Houston Texans this year. It only helps the development of Davis Mills, and I think the run game is something that we need to focus on. I do like Rex Burkhead, but I just think the Houston Texans need that dynamic running back. And, whether it's in the draft or free agency, we need to go ahead and get that.
And is David Johnson kind of on his way out then, or?
Dude, one of the worst trades in NFL history. This dude's a bum. Get him off this team. He shouldn't have been cut after his horrible season last year. After his 74 yards, one touchdown game against the Chiefs, he pretty much fell off. David Johnson was just, yeah, you like the guy, but horrible running back, not good whatsoever. I hope he's gone.
I mean, he just was not able to kind of like, get going after like his injury, or what are they kind of talking about? Like why he just has not,
Well, he
performed?
just wasn't the guy from even past week 3 of last year. You traded DeAndre Hopkins, a guy who never misses a game until he goes to the Cardinals, right? He never missed a game for the Houston Texans, all pro wide receiver. You essentially trade him for Ross Blacklock, and David Johnson. David Johnson's never had a 100-yard receiving game, rushing game, one of the worst blocking running backs on the team. It just didn't work out, for David Johnson. He definitely tried, you had to commend him from that, but I wanted him gone last year.
Yeah, it does. And when you look at the running backs, Rex Burkhead, that's an interesting, player, but that's not something that's going to, scare a defense to be like, okay, well now, now we're not going to focus on the wide receivers. Basically, it's just not offensively, it's not going to scare anybody. He definitely had some good games.
Yeah, he had like two good games. The one of them was a 150-yard game, towards the end of the season. We just need to get younger at that running back position. We haven't been young there in years.
Yeah, and when you look at it, back to what Arian Foster. That was
The GOAT.
Yeah. But yeah, when you look at the Texans, they've been known, other than Deshaun Watson, for defense, and obviously we talked about JJ Watt and your thoughts on him. But, going into next year, what are some key pieces on the defense? Now that Watt's gone, he's not the identity anymore. And what are some needs for the defense for the Texans?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, I think Lovie Smith definitely overachieved, as a defense coordinator. We only had 3 interceptions last year. We damn near had 17 this year. He pretty much changed this defense, overnight. I want another edge DN alongside of Jonathan Grenard. Jonathan Grenard, second-year guy, 8 sacks on the season. Should have definitely had a 10-piece until COVID took him out. Someone to look forward to next year. We need a safety back there. Justin Reed, he's leaving in free agency. Wherever he goes, just shout out to him. But I think safety, corner, and linebacker are definitely needs for the Houston Texans. I do think the safety position or the defense position gets addressed in the third overall pick, unless Nick Caserio wants to trade back, whether it's Kevon Thibodeau or Kyle Hamilton. But I think the defense can be fixed, for the Houston Texans.
Yeah, and you kind of look at it. I did see one of your tweets, and it looked like you were hoping. I saw obviously some wide receiver targets. You like Brandon Smith, linebacker.
Smart guy, Penn State. You look at what he did with Micah Parsons, like last year. You love that. You hope he could just replicate that. If you come from Penn State, like you're a very smart guy. Wan'Dale Robinson, the slot wide receiver from Kentucky. Davies Mills absolutely feasted with Damian Amendola, when he was healthy. I think that is something that could help Davies Mills get him a slot wide receiver. And then George Pickens, man, when you're 6'5", dude, there's not a lot of people who could guard you.
Yeah, you kind of need someone to be that. I mean, because wide receiver like makeup. I mean, you really don't have that with the Texans, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, Nico's a little bit faster, right?
Yeah. He is a little bit faster, but the Texans offense was so bad they never tried him deep until the very last game. That was, that's still one of the factors where we never really saw these rookies play at their full strength. That's where we have hope. Whoever comes in, no matter who it is, will be better than Tim Kelly or better than David Culley, and we might see a huge jump from these guys in year two.
Well, yeah, and kind of looking at year two. I mean, what are your hopes for 2022? I mean, it's not Super Bowl,
Mm-hmm.
but so realistically, what would make you happy to see kind of like, okay, this team is making strides, positive strides.
Yeah, I need to see Davis Mills continue to show that he could be a franchise QB. You know, you drafted him in the third round. You put a lot of pressure on this kid. Let's look at that. He came in a situation where this is supposed to be Deshaun Watson's team. Davis Mills doesn't get drafted on the Houston Texans unless Deshaun Watson has all these allegations against themselves. The dudes handled that, played bad, played good. I want to see him really, take this team by the balls and show that he could be a franchise QB. And whoever the head coach is, show me that you could coach. Bill Bryant had definitely had flaws. David Culley definitely has flaws. We just haven't seen a complete 4 quarters, that the Houston Texans played. And as far as also, just growth between the rookies and the second year guys.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at those, rookies, you want to see them develop. You want to see Davis Mills, obviously taking that leadership, and you know, yeah, he really did seem, like he took the reins, and it's so easy, especially with some of these, quarterbacks coming out and doing, amazing right away, to forget, even back to like Peyton Manning and, some of these all time great quarterbacks, they struggled early on, and it
To
takes,
18 picks.
yeah.
And Josh Allen looked horrible his first 2 years in the NFL. I'm not saying like you need to just name this dude the starter right then and then, but he's definitely earned a shot. A lot of
Mhm.
fans just hate him in Houston because he's not Deshaun Watson.
Well, yeah, and when you look at the draft, I mean, is there any quarterback in the draft this year that you would take over Davis Mills?
Honestly, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Unless Malik Willis or someone falls deep into the draft. I don't think the Houston Texans need to look at a QB. I do want them to bring in someone though, maybe a Marcus Mariota. I think he would fit the Houston Texans perfectly. Give Davis Mills some competition. That's about it.
Yeah, that is interesting. So like, you know, when you look at kind of the quarterback position, if Davis Mills, I mean, uh, when you look at it, so Davis Mills does this, we know he'll be in 22. Then we know he's the guy. What would you say that is?
Yeah, so if Davis Mills can, that's a damn good question. If he could put up over 250 yards and maybe about at least 22, 23 touchdowns, the same interceptions that what he threw in his rookie year, 10, 11, 12, nothing past the high teens, then I say like this dude has improved. What we also need to see out of Davis Mills is 4 quarters of complete football. Now that's not also his fault. It comes heavily down to coaching. That's what if he could play consistently four good quarters of football and grow, and really, be the leader for the Houston Texans, because that was something he said that he wasn't really focused on. He was just trying to gain their trust by his play. Then I would say this dude is arrived, or this dude could be a franchise QB.
Yeah, in with like, what are some of his strengths? Like, does he throw the deep ball pretty good, or is he kind of more the underneath? Or I guess yeah.
Yeah, so his deep ball was not really talked about until the end of the season, where he started connecting with Brandon Cooks, started connecting with Miko Collins. One thing that was, very good was his poise in the pocket as the season went on. First, he was very frantic. He was looking, towards the outsides, bouncing it out. He stayed in there. His feet were set. His shoulders were square. Everything about Davies Mills from when he got benched to when he came back got better.
And when you kind of talk about that, I had a chance to interview, former Philadelphia Eagles and Iowa lineman, and he talked about he was there when Michael Vick was, and he talked about it being different. The lineman, just it being different between a mobile quarterback as opposed to a pocket passer. And when you look at this team, obviously you talked about it kind of being built around Deshaun Watson.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see the line needing to kind of maybe adjust, because of, what Davis Mills is, if they're going to fully commit to him?
Yeah, so there's one kind of like conversation brewing as the tackles position. We have Laramie Tunsil. We don't know whether we're going to trade him or not. That's a conversation that's going on. I feel like if the Texans do trade Deshaun Watson, then there's really no need to bring Tunsil. He's definitely not going to sign a second contract here. I'm looking at the Bengals as someone who potentially is, a Laramie Tunsil, how good they've been doing. Titus Howard, he got drafted out of Alabama State. He was supposed to be a left tackle, but because of Laramie Tunsil, we moved him to right. However, due to the Laramie Tunsil injury, he did play 4 games at left tackle, and he graded his best ever, in his first 3 years at left tackle. So that's another conversation piece. I keep on talking about your boy James Daniels.
Yeah.
He's very athletic. He has strong hands, and he could set his feet. I'm looking at that dude, man. I'm throwing the bag at him this offseason.
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting because I'd have to look. I think he's a little bit older, and he had a couple.
He's 25.
Was he okay? For some reason, I guess I thought he was older, but he had a couple of rough games toward the end of the season. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if the Bears do, throw some money at him too. I mean, but yeah, I think, it's not a sexy pickup, but it's really important. That line is, the Bears, when we know that with the Bears, it's so important especially if you have a young quarterback like that.
So let me ask you a question. Would you rather have Davis Mills or Justin Fields based on his rookie season?
Oh, based on the rookie season, and I guess I didn't, look at it. Davis Mills, like all of his stats, potential wise, I have to say Justin Fields, just because of, what I've seen, in spurts. And like Davis Mills, the coaching is so important. And, it was with the Bears for Fields, they just did not put him in the best possible situation, including, especially that Browns game. They just did not put the line in the best position. They did not put him in the best position. So that is really important. You need a quarterback and a coach to be on the same page. And I think that's huge. But, just from the talent wise, I have to say Deshaun Watson. I have to say,
I would say Deshaun too, man.
Well, yeah, I have to say Justin Fields. And I do like the story of Davis Mills, though. But it's hard. It's hard not to look at him like a Gardner Minshew, right?
Yeah.
And I hope he proves him wrong. Because you look at the quarterbacks around the league, how many were unheralded and have really come to, do very well, or, just, you look back, in I'd have to, go through all the lists, but what Tony Romo, I think I always think of him, like he was just so unheralded and he just kind of almost wormed his way into that starting role. And then just, was competent, but just wasn't, enough to get them over the hump,
Mhm.
And I look at Davis Mills in that, you know, you look at a Deshaun Watson, you look at a Justin Fields, they have star power. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And Justin Fields, what he did in college, with those bruised ribs and just he's a gamer, right?
Yeah.
I mean, something like that endears you to him. And then obviously what he did, in the Pittsburgh game as well. So he has that. He has it, and then
He has
even
that it factor.
yeah, even with versus the Packers, like him just be able to kind of make something out of nothing, and so that's why I would take him. Obviously, there's a lot that he needs to improve on, but I like that, and it's interesting. You look at Davis Mills, and would you know as a Houston fan, do you think Davis Mills would be able to get you to the Super Bowl on his own in the next 5 to 10 years?
Oh, that's a hard. Ooh, you know.
Because you look at, the thing is, I mean, if you build a defense, and you can get a quarterback, here's a Bears fan, Rex Grossman was, got to the Super Bowl, right? Rex
Mhm.
Grossman, because of that defense. Now, the Bears didn't win it because of Rex Grossman. If they had any other quarterback, maybe even if they had Davis Mills, they would have won the Super Bowl because of that defense. So you can get a defense can get you to the Super Bowl. I don't know if a defense is going to win it now, as opposed
Yeah.
to when Ray Lewis, Ravens. Right now, it's such an offensive, driven league.
Yeah. As much as I want to answer that question and say, yeah, Davis Mills can, I really need to see what he does in the second season. Then I could,
Mhm.
we could do this a year from now and I give you a straight answer. Because when Tim Kelly was talking about, Davis Mills, he said himself, we kept the training wheels on him.
Ah,
So we really haven't even seen the full potential of Davis Mills. Yeah, that's why I'm one of the really few people hype about this guy. If you could deal with a shitty O line, a horrible running game, the worst off, horrible offense cornered M. Tim Kelly, the ghost of Bill O'Brien, as I call him. Let me see what you could do with another year with Pep Hamilton, who might
mhm.
be the OC. Let me see what you could do. Grow as a quarterback in year two. Then I could give you an answer. As of right now, all he's done for me right now is show me that he should be the starter for next year. As far as anything long term than that, I need to see it in year two, but also he's a third round pick.
Yeah.
And that's not what a lot of people still forget. Third round picks aren't supposed to, be having these conversations. Is this guy a franchise quarterback or not?
Well,
And we're
I was
having that with Davis Mills.
Yeah. When you look at it too, like, I don't know, how much pressure there really is on him, right?
I think the fans put more pressure on him when he was drafted.
Really?
Look, I was at the bar hammered.
Yeah.
I was like, why are we drafting a quarterback? We got to go, after defense or a wide receiver. The pressure was on him day one. Why didn't we take Kellen Mond, the quarterback from A&M? And
Uh,
he said it himself. Like, there is pressure on me. And he had to know it himself, man. You're coming to a situation, like I said, you're not even supposed to be here. You know, a lot of the fans written him off. Like, people tell me we should release Davis Mills, that he's complete ass, like, just because he's not Deshaun Watson. The
yeah,
the the story is getting crazy for him.
that is interesting. I mean, because yeah, when you look at quarterbacks, I mean, you look at Kellen Mond right now, right? And buried on the
Depth
Vikings
chart, yeah.
depth chart, and part of that might have been coaching wise, and now he's gone. But when you look at Davis Mills, I mean, he at least gives you a shot, right? Um, so and yeah, and you do have to give him a chance, I think. But I mean, your question before, I would take Justin Fields because of just the ceiling seems to be higher. Um, I would like to see Davis Mills do well, and you know, I would like to see Houston do well as well. And for me, I like to see different teams, succeeding. And when you look at the
Yeah.
Texans, they just haven't. And part of it, I mean, obviously, we can kind of get into this as well. I mean, and I don't know if it's, all the way to Bill O'Brien, but, it really the foundation. I mean, it has been tough, right? I mean, do you trust the ownership there?
This is the only part of the Houston Texans where I say I do not trust whatsoever.
Right.
Kyle just doesn't care about this team. His dad did as much, as much heat that Bob McNair got for his like racist comments and all that. One thing he did care about was the team and winning.
Mm-hmm.
When you see Kyle McNair, he looks hammered on the sideline. His wife is passing out during games.
Wow.
Nothing about the ownership shows that they care about this football team. Every Sunday, there's a guy who stands in front of his section and yells, "Sell the team." And then they usually kick him out by the second quarter. I myself, my idiot self, did a march for Deshaun Watson. It was called I Stand for Four. I had the cops called on me as soon as I got there.
Wow.
Like the ownership just doesn't care about winning, and that is sad.
Mm-hmm.
And the only hope we have is Nick Caserio.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know how much you follow with the Bears, coaching search and everything. Basically the owners, they're, that McCaskies, the family, the Hallis family, it's just all the way down, whatnot. And they had this just ridiculous press conference, saying, the owner said, well, he's not a football guy, he's just a fan. But then he was going to be the one hiring the general manager. And so there was really, no trust that way either. They just kind of resting on laurels of, okay, we're the Bears, and some of these owners, they just kind of, they have an NFL franchise. They've been successful business. So they just kind of rest on that. They're going to be, getting money regardless from the NFL. It is tough to kind of watch them, not make, winning decisions. If they've done so much good in business, why can't they do this? And, at least, hopefully it sounds like, GM wise, you're at least, in a good place there now.
Mm,
So there's some positive kind of things going forward in spite of the ownership
yeah.
then.
Yeah, like I said, as soon as Nick Caserio got here, like he said, like, I want to build my own legacy. He did something we've never seen, like made 60 transactions on the depth chart, brought in, the Philip Lindsays of the world, Mark Ingram, Desmond King, drafts a great rookie class with no first, second round pick, handling this situation with Deshaun. I myself would have pulled the trigger at the trade deadline. I would have. And
Yeah.
now he put the Texans in a position, you're either going to play with us and I don't give a damn what you think, or you're waiving that no trade clause and it's whoever bids the highest is going to take you.
Yeah. And do you think that, okay, so the GM, will do enough? Do you think the ownership will kind of get in the way of anything like that? Or
I don't think so anymore because of Nick Caserio. I fully
okay,
believe that
that's good.
Kyle was just looking for someone to dump the problem on.
Yeah.
And, Jack Easterby obviously had a huge part in the hiring of Nick Caserio. And Nick Caserio is obviously, taken it and has not, really wavered from the job. He's not shied from it. Like I said, he knows the pressure that we put on him, and he's taking it and he's trying to, make this team, a winning football team again.
Yeah, I mean, and when you look at it, I mean, that's really, what fans want to see. I mean, obviously you kind of go out there and you're going to support your team regardless, but you want to see wins.
Yeah, of course, of course. So, we know that right now what we're just looking on is the development of Davies Mills and these young rookies and the second year guys, and hopefully, the development that leads to wins. But we all know right now it's the rebuild, and right now you have the third overall pick. If you trade Deshaun Watson, you could get multiple more. Things get really interesting in the next coming weeks.
So has it been just kind of a surprising kind of turn? Because, I mean, the height of, what Deshaun Watson was doing to now, I mean, did you really expect this a couple years ago?
No, I expected us to have a Lombardi right now. We were 24-0 against the Kansas City Chiefs damn near a year and 2 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Slippery slope since then.
Yeah.
So that's why I also say I kind of have hope in this Nick Caserio ordeal, is because we're going through all this shit and maybe we have a potential franchise quarterback. We brought someone in who made this defense better. And now I'm just looking for the next head coach to lead this team.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting kind of cycle of head coaches. I mean, to see when the first domino will fall, and then where everyone else kind of slots in. I think it was kind of interesting. They did that extra 2-week window, but no one really took advantage of that. And but when you look at kind of coaches, and at least with the Texans, they already have their GM set. So with the Bears and some other teams, I mean, we're kind of one step behind already.
Yeah, in terms of head coaching, like I myself have 3 targets. Number 3, I'm gonna go ahead and say Brian Dabo. What he
Mhm.
did against that Patriots defense, woo, he dissected them. That Bills offense was damn near unstoppable. Number 2, D'Amico Ryans. Like I said, former Texans linebacker, was the rookie of the year for defensive wise. Is making that 49er defense a top 10, top 5 defense. And he's been doing it for multiple years. He's definitely earned this spot. When he was with the Eagles, he was the leader of that linebacking core, as much he was to the Houston. He's earned his spot. And if you look at what Nick Caserio said about Mike, finding the next Mike Tomlin, then this is what
Mhm.
you see in D'Amico Ryans. However, I still say, I still believe it. If Brian Flores doesn't get fired, then the Houston Texans don't fire David Culley. I think you're going after Brian Flores. I think that's the end all be all. People love him. Players were upset when he got fired. This is an opportunity for the Houston Texans, and maybe Nick Caserio wants to put his eggs in one basket and go after Brian Flores.
Are you hearing that, like, maybe he he would prefer the Texans then?
I haven't heard he preferred. I know that he had an interview in freaking 2 days.
Yeah.
So that has to be something. And then obviously, the speculation has to happen. Did he have a conversation with Nick Caserio, when he got fired? Hey, because the Houston Texans waited 4 days to fire David Culley.
Mm,
This is when the whole I feel sorry for David Culley movement came,
mhm.
because the man had, 4 days where he didn't know if he was going to have a job or not. I think Nick Caserio really had these conversations, um Brian
Flores.
Flores,
Yeah.
Josh McDaniels, and all these guys about the potential to coming here, and ended up making the decision.
Yeah. And Flores would be it seemed to be would kind of, hopefully bring things together. And when you look at the franchise, that's they really need to continue to build. And
Yeah.
it seems like just win-loss perspective, he kind of really did that with the Dolphins.
Yeah, I mean, when you start off 0 and I think 7, that's tough to come back from. The Houston Texans did that, a couple years ago when they were 0 and 4 and then 1 and 5 a
Mhm.
couple years back later. But then to win 7 of your last 8 with Tua Tagovailoa, as much as we love Tua, he's middle of the league for me. Nothing too special. I think if Deshaun Watson is on the Dolphins, they're a freaking issue in the NFL. They pretty much screw themselves out of that whole like Watson idea right now. But Brian Flores, man, he's someone that the Houston like the fans want.
Yeah, when you look at, I was just trying to think like quarterback wise, and obviously it's not, if Flores is the coach isn't going to happen. But would you rather have Tua or would you rather have Davis Mills?
Davis Mills. It's
Really?
still
Yeah.
Davis Mills. Like he's shown a lot. Like, and maybe that's just me being just a Davis Mills supporter.
Yeah.
But you talked about Justin Fields having that it factor, and I could 100% say Davis Mills. I don't see that from him. But for him to get better, and his last 5 games have 105 passer rating, 10 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 300-yard games, 3 touchdown-yard games. The dude is getting better.
Yeah.
And
And
it's just, what if he has a coach that can make Davis Mills on that next level? We don't know yet.
yeah, that's what you want to see. That's what you want to see. Someone kind of make something. Obviously where they weren't expected to, and you know it. to take that mantle from Deshaun Watson, it's got to be tough anyway. I mean, he has this huge shadow, but that would be a great story.
No, it's a story that I'm already liking. A lot of fans, like I said, we're on the fence. We're looking at this year too. If he could, just grow and do better, win a couple games, and Davis Mills, like we are ready to ride for you. However, if Brian Flores convinces Deshaun Watson to stay,
Wow.
that's gonna be crazy for the NFL, and that's gonna be crazy for the Houston Texans. Like I said, I think the moves that Nick Caserio made last year were to keep Deshaun Watson to stay. Desmond King, Philip Lindsay, all these guys. Deshaun Watson, the dude's a savage. If he stays for the Houston Texans, no, I'm sorry, with the Houston Texans, who knows what might happen?
Well, hopefully, there's some new massage, you know, parlors he can go to, I guess.
Man, the horny boy himself, he blocked me on Twitter.
Did he?
You know, ah, you have to get rid of him at this point. You have
Yeah,
to if you're the Houston Texans. There's so much drama. There's so much memes. Like we are ready to get done with this Deshaun Watson thing. But like I said, man, winning cures all. And if the first game this dude goes out and throws for 5 touchdowns, 350, welcome back, buddy. I missed you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's definitely gonna, yeah. Yeah. So there's so much there. I definitely appreciate you coming and
Yeah,
talking. We got over my coffee in there, so I appreciate that.
no worries.
I look forward to kind of connecting, hopefully later on in the off season again. So much to talk about, and I appreciate you coming on. So where can everyone find you again?
Yeah, so YouTube, 713 Houston Sports. I post about 3 to 4 times a week. And on Twitter at 713 HSP. Y'all can hit me up on that. Those are just my main two at the moment. Shout out to Houston. It's a long road, but one that I'm excited to look, like just watch.
Absolutely. Well, once again, this has been NFL Updated Cover 2 series on the Houston Texans. Thanks again, Ruben.
Thank you so much for having me.